Asha and Cara, what we're going to do here is we've got the same tree. It's the 2.28 metre slim Cambridge. We're working with a slimmer model. Obviously, it's a lot easier for us to demo here, but the concepts that we use are exactly the same regardless of whether you've got the widest tree or the narrowest tree, all right? And a lot of what you'll hear me say is we're going to be doing, basically it's kind of maths. It's breaking things down into smaller elements. So we're going to do one tree with a candy theme, and we're going to do one tree with a nutcracker theme. And we're going to be doing some of the same techniques and some different techniques, but you can therefore follow the processes of what we're doing. And then some of the pieces they put in, I'll also demo for you how we created those so you know what to do. So let's get cracking, girls. First of all, what we're going to do is show you the lights, and we did a different set of lights. So the tree that Cara has, you can see you've got the twinkling lights down the middle. This is the cluster lights, and these are just going on the website, and I'll do this tomorrow, so if you are looking to place an order, this is a new brand that we've got in, and I'm really happy with them. I'm going to use them myself because they connect. They're cheaper than our normal connectable garland lights, which is always great. And the idea with a garland light is that they are really close together. So if you want to add extra lights to your tree, and you can see the difference, these both have 400 lights on them, then that tree has the addition of the garland light down the middle. If our trees have hook-on branches, so the branches hook in, I would therefore layer this as I build my tree. If you have a tree where the branches are all attached and are hinged, before you fluff out the branches, you can again layer it around, or if you don't have as many lights, simply run them down the middle of the tree. Sort of 2 strings, just get them down for the front of your tree, all right? So you don't have to do the back if you're not going to see the back. In that way, you can look at your tree and say, okay, that's a 2.28 metre tree, so I'm going to need 5 or 6 metres. This is actually a 6 metre string, I believe, from memory, so that would be perfect because it'll give you a little bit of wiggle, but it'll be sort of, you can run it down both sides. So that's the difference between the trees to start with. Okay, so then we're going to start with we always start with our tree topper. Oh, this is all going to unwind on me now. So with the tree toppers, what we like to do is we always tend to, you can just start, girls, and I'll talk to it. So we tend to start with a couple of picks, and we like to, first of all, make sure the girls have already sprayed them out. So whenever you have a pick, you know, if you're going to get a pick, well, clearly I'm prepping this for something, don't just put it on your tree like this. You really want to just take that time to spray it out as you work it, because it'll make all the difference to your tree. And we tend to work in 3s, so you have one going down the middle and then one on either side, and quite often we'll have one that's just slightly offset, so they're not even, so one's slightly higher than the other. I hope that vision makes sense to you. So the girls, as I said, have already sort of sprayed out their particular picks there, and when you do that, so even that you might stop, but you can go and take it further and just make sure every one of those balls is just nice and separate from the stem, and it will just give a lot more body and life to your tree, just taking that little bit of time. If you have storage where you can leave them like this, great. If not, then you gently fold them back up before you, at the end of the season. So we have the one go in the top, and then we're going to have one go in sort of either side. Now sometimes, of course, just like you will at home, sometimes the picks don't go exactly where you want, so you sometimes have to try it a couple of times to get it right, but we find that this is a nice sort of model as a starting point. If you really want to make your topper big, you can go with a 3rd layer. So for today we're doing, you're doing kind of 3 layers, aren't you? Yeah. So Cara's got the red spray at the top, and then she's doing the ball spray as a 2nd layer, and then she's going to put a sign in the middle. So we tend to have a focal point up there, and then a couple of sprays, and then you can make that spray as big as you want. I really like the one that Cara's using. This is a wavy, I think it's called wavy spray. It's definitely got the word wavy in it, and I just find that that's a really nice one to work for the top of the tree. The other thing is, of course, we are doing the trees just for you at the front. We're only dressing half a tree today. If you are doing a tree that's visible all the way around, then you're going to want to repeat the same sort of pattern on both sides. But if you don't see the whole tree, you can save a bit of money just by making sure you don't want it flat. We're going to be a little bit flat today because it's obviously temporary. But if I was doing that at home and it was in a corner, or not in a corner, against a wall where you can see the side, I'd probably still have a couple more sprays coming out, but I wouldn't worry about another focal point in the middle because no one's going to see that. But that means that the whole spray looks, like it surrounds the whole tree. Oh yes, that's right, thank you. I told the girls, don't let me forget. So sometimes the picks will just sit exactly where you want them and you can just feed them in. Other times, if they're not, you can use the branches to just gently fold around the picks to put them where you want them to be. And that can even be, if you want the pick to be sort of leaning forward a little bit, you can still just run the branch through. It doesn't have to be upright. So, when you're getting that spray effect, you can use that little bit of foliage because obviously the foliage is wired. Some trees are easier to manoeuvre the branches than others. So if you do have a tree, particularly I find the flock trees because they're made of a moulded plastic, a lot of them, and so then some of the branches aren't as easy to bend around. If you've got a tree that's the case, then you can also just use, I use all the time bind wire, but whatever florist wire, whatever you like to use, to just put a little bit in place to put your pick where you want it to be. You can also you can see that what we're trying to do here is just slightly different looks here. We've got Tasha working with the picks tight into the tree. So you can see you can either have it sort of a smaller top or you can make more of a spray effect depending on what you like. All right, so if you like to keep everything a little bit more compact and neat, then you just keep the picks in shorter and closer to your tree. If you like it to be big and your Grinchy, if you look at the Grinch tree there, you can see the picks are really sprayed out because that's the style of tree that we're doing. So that's always a personal choice on how you like the picks to be. Do many of you do the picks on the tops of your trees? Yeah, okay, because it makes all the difference. You can have the same tree with just a star or an angel and it look beautiful, but if you do this, if you want to make it into a designed tree, it's the difference in look. Tasha's also using the branch to hold the lollipop, being a bigger piece, into place there. So I think you've centred that. Is that one centred? Sort of. Okay, that's fine. Yeah. So you've got a big stem that you're working into there, and then after she's finished, as you can see, she's just refluffing those branches to make sure everything's ready for the next layer. Now what Kara's doing there is she's used a sign, and in your goodie bags you received little packs with some cable ties and a set of mounts, because this is the thing that I always never have enough of at home, and that's what we use to tie. So if you try and put that into your tree as a tree topper, you can kind of do it, but it's a little tricky to get it exactly where you want it to be. But if we simply put our cable mounts, and these I bought at an electrical supply place. We will have little bags like you've got available online, but if you're going through a lot, just buy a bag of them at electrical supply or at Bunnings. But Bunnings was like $5 for 5 of these things. So yeah, I went to an electrical place in Burwood, electrical supplies, where they sell the cable ties and so forth as well. So you therefore can just put 2 of these on. They're really, actually the stick on them is really good. I found it's worked well on both the wood and the tin, and therefore you do that, and then, don't use the good scissors, and then you can either cable tie, but I find just as easy to then be able to put a piece of your bind wire through, and that's how Kara has easily been able to tie that sign into place. If you want it to be on the side, then I would suggest, rather than having them lined up on the back, you would line them up like that. So you can therefore put it into your tree on an angle and still be easily tying it to the centre of the tree. All right, these aren't overly heavy, so it makes it easy to do. The other thing that you can do with the signs, if you wanted to, is, let me just find a pick here. I might have cut all my picks up. No, here we go. Is you can use the cable ties and, sorry, the cable mounts. I've played with him already and I didn't like his position on the side. So I'm just going to put another 2 on there. No one's going to see it. And just use a couple of these. So as I said, you've got 2 in your little bag, so you've got enough for a sign, which means you can do your centre, your topper if you want to do it this way. And again, using a bit of bind wire. Oh, sorry, no, cable tie on this one, because it's harder. I would just try and get these as tight as possible and turn it into a pick. So if you've got a offcut from your picks, you can then put this in there, and I've only tied 1 on there, but then I've turned it into a pick. All right, so if I do my second one, and then I can have it going into the side of the tree as well. Now this is an offcut. This, because being tin, this is a little bit heavier. I actually think maybe a piece of wood would be better, or something that's a little bit stronger than that one, or a thicker pick. But the idea of just simply using the cable ties and the mounts, the back, means that you can use these now in your tree very easily wherever you want them as well. Okay, so any questions just on the topper and all good? Okay, so next stage what we like to do is we like to work the ribbon into the tree. So there's a couple of different ways we're going to do that. Tasha's tree, we've made some bows, and I am going to be using the bow maker later, so I'm not going to demo that right now. But we've used a couple of different ribbons to make some big bows. And you're always working with your bigger pieces down to your smaller pieces when you do the design, because it just, as I say, design is really maths. It's just breaking things down from one big element into smaller elements that you can then work within. All right, and if you do that with your bigger pieces, it makes it a lot easier. So Tasha's going to work those. We like to put the bows a little bit into the tree, and we're just working with 4 of the bows because she's also got a lot of flowers. So the bows are the biggest pieces, and we often will use a diamond if we've got 4 of something, or we will use sort of a triangle. So often you'll find things come in 3s or in that diamond pattern. Don't be afraid. People say you can't do even numbers in decorating. I actually think a tree can look great if you have something top left and something bottom right as well, particularly if it's a feature piece. I think if you look, am I correct, Cara? You've got 2 pieces in the snowy theme at the back, bigger pieces. One's sort of top left, one's a little bit more bottom right. And so you can spread the pieces out that way. And what Cara's doing is she's using the ribbon in her tree. So we've put a couple of pieces in first, and I'm going to, just to show you, make it a little bit easier to hopefully see as Cara's putting it in. I'll just show you the technique. We've layered ribbon in this one, so we have used 2. We've only got a little bit of the red showing, but you can always pull it out a bit more if you want to have the back colour showing more, or you can use a wider ribbon at the back and then get narrower to get your colours right. Layering is also a great way when you can't get exactly what you want and you're mixing things up to get the colours together. So with the ribbon, the technique that we're using there for Cara's, so I've just got this offcut here, and just cut a couple of pieces here. So let me just, we're just having, I'm just making sure I'm doing that. We've got a little tail showing first, then we're going to make a loop. Now again, if you've got really thick ribbon, your loop might need to be a bit bigger. When you pinch, some of the 10cm ribbons can be quite thick to work with. This is nice, it's soft, but it still holds, all of our ribbons are wide, so use wide ribbons, don't use anything that's not wide. And then you can do another loop, and you can either do the same size. So Cara's got just 1 loop in hers, or you could do a double loop and so you just make that a bit bigger, and then you're going to pinch that in. So I pinch my ribbon and then just put my bind wire or my florist wire over the top. And I like to, when you get to this point, whenever you're doing anything with the ribbon, just try and get it as tight as you can, all right, because then it's not going to fall apart on you. So you've got 2 loops there, and then you've got a tail coming out, so straighten everything up. I'm going to turn this around and do this again because I've done the big loop on the wrong end. Let's get it right. Oops, I'm tying it up more. But it's a really nice way. It does use a lot more ribbon, obviously. So when you're doing this technique, be aware that you probably want to be working on 2 rolls of ribbon. If you're doing our normal cut ribbon, which I'll quickly show you as well, then you don't need as much. What I made the mistake before is, because my tail is going to sit at the bottom there, I want my bigger loop to be the first loop and then my next loop. So I'm going to just pinch this all in, make sure I've got the bottom here and go with another loop here. And it's always a bit fiddly at this point. And then you can use also this wire to pull it into your tree. So Cara, to get it into the tree, she's actually attaching it. So you've got, exactly. So you've got your wire here that you can use to then tie that into your tree. All right? And that's how you do that. Oh, sorry, I thought that was a question. That's all right. And in this one, because we've got a lot of material on, one sec, that's why we've got the bows in the tree. So we've got a lot going on, and we just wanted a bit of filler in there with the colour. Hello.
The bumps, I'm technical, bumps, have you attached it all the way into the stem of the tree, or are you just attaching it to a branch?
You go on, you answer.
To a branch.
But you want to get into your tree a little bit. So with that, you're going to attach it in. Can you see that? So not onto the tip here. You want to kind of get your ribbon in a little bit, but it doesn't need to go in as far as the middle of the tree. Yeah. And that's really what makes all the difference. That extra little bit of the shape and dimension to the tree. I think it's always nice. We've done, like on the Grinch tree, you've got that ropey, just that we just added at the end. That wherever you've got that extra little bit of dimension, it really makes the tree sing, I think. I'll just move that back. You can see me still. Okay, so how are we going? So we got the ribbon in. Let's see what's next on our list here. Okay, then we're going to work again bigger pieces. So we've got flowers going on both. We love to use the flowers. Do many of you use flowers? Yeah, I would have thought. You guys, because you're here because you love decorating and you've kind of gone from just basics, you know that when you add bigger size baubles and you add the flowers, you really make your pieces pop. If you try and make a tree sing and you're using 7 centimetre balls throughout, it's just never going to quite get the look that you're looking for. So with the flowers, again, we're working in between. So Tasha on this tree has got kind of that diamond shape with the ribbon, with the bows. So she can use that. And Tasha's actually got a couple of different flowers that we're going to work into that tree. So rather than going a whole lot of one flower, she's got multiple flowers. Now, what we're doing with this tree, again, the ribbon's going to act as kind of a way of dividing up the tree. So you don't have to have a particular technique or particular positioning of your ribbon. And also, we're always saying when we're working in the warehouse, and particularly like the mint tree here, when we just put the ribbon on, you can look at it and go, oh, no, it's not quite right. Don't worry, you've got to trust the process, that if you've kind of put some on an angle, just spread it out as best you can, working with the length you've got available. So don't kind of go, I want everything to be close, but I only have one roll. Think first of how much material you've got, and then you can work out how far it's going to go on your tree. If you've got a limiting amount of some of the materials, then you might use a bit more of a filler at the back of the tree if it's not going to be seen, but you still want a little bit of movement there. So Cara is therefore using those flowers and just basically positioning them sort of between the ribbon a bit to give us that next level to, again, break our bigger space down into smaller spaces. As is Tasha, just again using the different, she's got her second flower going in to there, and she's working those flowers into the tree. And because the candy tree is a bit more, everything's sort of sitting at this stage, sitting in the tree. And then what we like to do at the end, and you'll see, is we're going to add some sprays to kind of give it, give it that bit of extra width. Yes?
I always think I have to do this ribbon symmetry, like around the tree.
Uh-huh.
But you've done it like one way and then another way. So is there any sort of plan about the ribbon, or you just put it?
No, I think it's really important to look at, if you look at styles you like, then you kind of just copy that ribbon pattern. So you can certainly wrap it around the tree if you like. I find it difficult personally when I do that to actually get the evenness. I'm normally pretty, I don't need everything to be exact, but when it comes to the ribbon, I find that I don't often get my 2 rows working aligned. So that's why I prefer this technique. The other technique I'll quickly show you is to simply use, I'm just going to use this as my piece of foliage, and I know most of you have seen it, but if you don't have a lot of ribbon, or if you're doing ribbon for the first time, because it's often an element that we have found difficult to work with, so we might have gone and removed it from our repertoire of decorating, then 50 centimetre, let's assume it's a 50 centimetre piece of ribbon, and then you can go about this without wiring it. I just personally find if you wire it for the extra amount of time, it's going to sit where you want to as you add your other pieces. It's not going to fall out as you're working through the tray and so forth. You just put, again, some wire on the end, keep it tight so it's not going to fall off. And the other end, oh, I'm using the good scissors. And then you can, that whole idea of where we have the bigger pieces of ribbon, it's not as easy to get that even coverage through the tree, but if you go with smaller pieces like this, and in fact I'll put I've got all my stuff here, and we put it here, we can just cut that and then you can work it into your tree and just tie it into that, and then you can just work backwards and forwards. And yeah, and if you've got a couple of ribbons, then you can do the first ribbon with a bit more of a gap and then work in between with your second colour of ribbon, which works well. And you can see just in how I've positioned that in tree, how it's kind of coming in and out of there. Any other questions about ribbon? Yeah.
The ribbon on that one, what sort of length are we working with the...
Oh, that's a good question. I think it was about 1.5 metres to 2 metres. Yeah, we find that sort of is enough to give you those 2 loops with a little bit of in the middle. I would suggest, again, because it will also depend on your size of your tree and how much ribbon you've got, that you don't cut it. Maybe try doing the ties first and make sure that that's right. Think about, okay, I've got a 9 metre roll of ribbon, that's all I've got. Therefore, I can work 1.5 metre pieces and I'm going to maximise the use of that roll. You could also make your top piece a little bit smaller, because obviously it's narrower, and your bottom piece a bit bigger. So you could go with the top piece being sort of 1 to 1.2 metres, and then your bottom piece is more 1.5 to 1.8. Yeah.
Would you, I mean, you're doing 2 here, right? Would you ever go to 3 and the next one being thicker?
Absolutely, I've done that before. We've had 10 centimetre wide, then 6.4, and then the 3.8. And absolutely, and the fact that you're using the wire makes that possible. If you're trying to do that and you're just trying to position it, I find, I see a lot of the overseas ladies who are very talented, but they're just putting the ribbon in the tree and using the branches. I find, for me, that's risking damaging my tree. I try to minimise the mucking around with my branch as much as possible, because my tree's a big investment. So therefore, for the extra bit of time, I can just put the bind wire through, yeah, and it looks beautiful. And again, a great way to work if you're struggling to get your colour mix. It's a great way to bring your colours all together if you can't find one ribbon that's got them all. All right, we'll just do a very quick light session for you because, as I said, because we've done it so many times, I made an assumption and I shouldn't have. So obviously the lights are on the tree, so we're just going to talk to what you do. First of all, I don't recommend winding your way around the tree. The only exception to that is if you have a tree, like last year, I used, that's actually my tree from home, the Cambridge over there. It's 2.28 metres. And I used the cluster lights on that tree, and I use them all over the tree. So as I lay each branch out, I simply laid the lights in and out. It's a lot easier to do if it's not a hinged tree, all right? If it's hinged, it's quite difficult to hold everything up and do that. But if you want amazing lights, and the lights did look sensational last year, that is one way to do it. So you can either do it with your cluster lights, or our normal strings of lights are 10 centimetres apart, each light. We find they're a really good length to work with because you don't have too much cord that you're trying to hide, but it gives you enough light distance to cover your tree without having to have, you know, loads and loads of lights. I always think the best things you can do with Christmas is invest in your tree, invest in your lights. All the other decorations can be built up over time. So if you do like something well lit, then hold off buying decorations and buy the lights and get that right, because your tree will look amazing for it. So you can therefore layer the lights in and out if you wish to, if you want a full coverage and you want lights inside the tree. But what we normally do with our trees for a kind of an average coverage of tree is we will wind the lights down the tree. So we have connectable lights, just so you understand the difference. Connectable lights means that you've got one transformer and then the lights can go one after the other, or if you've got a very big tree, you've got like tree fingers that the lights come off. And when you use lights in the 10-metre strings and then connect one after the other, you're not going to get knotted lights, all right? So that's also a reason I like working with that length. But when you're working with a string, let's say this tree, if I'm starting out, I'm only going to buy 200 lights. So therefore, let me just come over, actually I'll come over to Cara's tree. So if I've only got 200 lights, I'm going to wind one set of lights down one half of my tree and one set of lights down the other, because then I'm going to have even coverage of my lights on the tree. If I decide the next year I'm going to buy a third set of lights, then I'm going to divide the tree into 3 sections and do exactly the same thing. Four sets of lights, 4 sections of the tree. I will often start taking the top off the tree so that I'm not up a ladder, and I wind some lights around that and then put it in place. That means though I've used some lights, so my section for that set of lights is narrower, because of course I've only got half the string of lights left. If you do this technique and you want lots of lights on your tree, so you've got 10 strings of lights, it means, you know, when I was saying before, you don't go in and out. You've got a bit more cord there, so you can just push the lights in and out as you wind down the tree. So the advantage of doing this is you don't get to the end of winding around and go, oh, I've got a giant gap. What am I going to do? And it is again, it's all maths. Break it down into sections and you'll have an even coverage of tree and it'll look fantastic. All right? Does anyone want me to explain anything else? Yeah.
How many strings is on that tree?
These got 400 lights on the 2 trees there. Yeah. We do have a PDF that you get. I think it still comes when you sign up with us on our mailing list, that has some suggestions. Again, you guys, because you're into Christmas, you're probably going to be the higher end of lights, and even you could be higher again. They're kind of average uses, but I think more lights. I mean, you know, if you look at a tree in America, it is full of lights, and I know a lot of you guys are looking at your inspiration overseas for the lighting. So that's what you do. And then, as we say, if you use the difference between those 2 trees, use something in the middle to glow. The other thing you'll see is we set the middle ones on twinkling and the outer ones on static, and it gives a little bit of movement to the tree without it flashing. Yeah. Be careful when you buy your lights. You don't want a tree that, you don't want lights, oh, there's a cord there. You don't want lights that are harsh flash for in the house. So the connectable lights that I was talking about, they can also be set. Can you just push, can you see your controller to sit?
Just trying to find it.
Yeah, we've got so many cords, we're not sure.
So that's the connection.
No, but that's not the controller.
No, not the control.
That's okay, we'll have a look. We'll try and set it off later so you can see. But a twinkling light will gently fade. A flashing light goes on off. And in a house, that can be quite harsh. Oh, well done. The other thing is we're using warm white here. You can use cool white, of course. I personally, in my house, prefer the warm white for most uses, but outside I'll often go to the cool white for more brightness. So again, it's just about, I don't turn my lights off either. My tree lights stay on from the minute we set up to the time it packs away. And again, it's because I know the lights are very good transformer quality, I don't have to worry about them. Any other lights questions? Sorry, I should have thought about that beforehand. Yeah, of course, yeah.
When you're putting your lights on, always turn your lights on.
Thank you very much. Oh, love that, Jean. Yes, yes, yes. Yes. Turn your lights on, that's right, that's right. And that way you can see what you're doing, and also you don't get to the end and find that the lights have broken or got water damage or something in the off season. All right. Any other questions, or we're going to keep going? Excellent. Okay, so let's go now. We've got our base structure. So what we're doing, as I say, we're kind of getting base, and now we're going to work again more base with the larger size baubles. So the girls are going to now add some of the larger balls to the tree. So we're using in both trees the 12.5 centimetre size, the bigger. So Kara's holding one up there. So often people will get a box of these, and I've had a couple of clients, even the 10 centimetre, they'll get a box in the mail and go, oh, they're way too big for the tree. Once you put them on, you'll be amazed how great they look. So with this tree being a narrower tree, we're pushing those balls in again to give a bit of depth to the tree, and we're using them to fill out the tree. So Kara again is kind of working with the ribbon. She's got the flowers and then working in the spaces in between. And Tasha is working with a bit more of that diamond and working in between the diamond pattern. And you can see some of those balls are going in quite deep. So it really does make a difference to the overall look of your tree if you can fill it out that way as well. Yeah.
You've got tight trees.
Yep.
You go to the bigger trees. Mine's quite sparse in
Yep.
branches. So so I normally hang from a branch.
Yep. Because you could still stick onto the branch itself inside. So is that what you're saying? So let's say this is your branch, but you've got no foliage in this part here. Is that kind of right? And then it starts. With the bigger balls, I would use this part here and push them right into the tree and hang from here. Am I answering that?
But also not towards the end, I guess that's where...
Oh, for the bigger size balls? You could do both, absolutely. And if your tree is sparse and bigger, we're using the 12.5 centimetre balls here. 15 look great. Overseas you'll see even 20. Now I don't carry the 20 anymore because it was almost too much. See, people would look at them and go, oh no, I can't do that. But they are amazing, and bigger trees, I would definitely look at some 15 centimetre inside your tree as well to fill out the gaps. Get that done before you even, you want to fluff a bit, but before you've over fluffed, because when you're getting right into a tree, if it's a bigger tree, then you are going to want to refluff the branches a bit, because you're going to make a bit of mess. So I would kind of almost halfway through the fluffing get those balls in there and then finish that process off. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I would be doing the 15 centimetre all the way up to about the 3/4 mark on a 10-foot tree, and then the top quarter you maybe go to the 12.5, and that will look fantastic. It also has to be your style, of course, but it will work and look great. Did I see another hand go up? No. Okay, so you can see also with these balls that we're using, these are our candy finish balls that have got really lovely, thank you, just got a really beautiful luster on them as well, which they're just really nice. But they come also as a ball pack. I feel like a school teacher. If you have a ball like this that's a bit fancier, of course you can use it on the outside of your tree as well. If you're going with the ball packs in the 15 and the 12 centimetre that are a little bit plainer, they're the ones you might push into your tree a bit more. Also, as I say, as you build up your tree, you might start with some big balls that are a little bit plainer and then buy some fancy ones. Don't not use them, push them into the tree. All right, so you can kind of replace some of your plainer pieces by just using them inside the tree and then using your fancier ones on the outside of it. Okay, let me, so we've got, did you have any other big ones to go on, or we've got all the big balls in? I'm going to have a quick look. Oh yes, so we've got another little sign. Oh, this hook here. So we've got The balls, just as you can see, the flowers fitting in there. And so you just got everything broken down into a nice space to work with. And then Kara's got a couple of signs. So she's just put some bind wire around the back of that one so that you can, because it's light and smaller, easy to just add in there like a decoration, but it's a bigger size. And then for Tasha's tree, we're just using some of the candy canes. And you can see also you're using bind wire. So sometimes if things don't hang the way you want, you may choose to actually use rewiring them. In fact, for me personally, I find if I don't take the cords off my ornaments, it's the only thing I see on my tree. So I've changed everything to bind wire. That's just because it's my preference. But Florist Fire, you don't have to have ornament hooks. This does the job, and you don't have to over worry. I just tend to, when I put it on the tree, I just bend it over. That's it. I don't wind it on. No one's in my house where I've got to worry it being knocked or taken, so forth, so I make it as easy as I can. All right, so how are we going? So we've got all of the bigger pieces in now, haven't we, girls? Yep, beautiful. All right, so then simply we've gone from the biggest pieces down, so now we're going to just start putting in some of our general ornaments into the trees. So for Kara's tree, we're primarily working with the colours of the tree. There's not a lot of fancy decorations going into that tree. All right, so again, we wanted to show you the difference between using a lot of balls and just the colour, and the ribbon being the sort of the hero with the sign, versus Tasha's tree where it's all Candyland. So you're going to have a lot more Candyland pieces that are going to be put onto the tree and tied throughout. So because you've got your bigger structure and you've broken it down, you're again just fitting your smaller pieces into those gaps that you have there. There's nothing too difficult in hanging the ornaments in there. As I said, the only thing I would do is I personally would put the bind wire on to make it easier. If you're using a flocked tree, then obviously you don't want green wire. You're going to just want to get some white florist. Well, I think you can get white florist wire. I'm sure I've had it in the past that you put onto the trees. If it's just something you want to do quick, you can obviously just use the strings that come on them as well. Okay, any questions as we're working through that? Because otherwise I'll demo the next bit. All right, so as the girls work through that, what I'm going to show you is what we're going to work into this tree after the decorations are on is a pick that we created, and we've actually got the same. We made picks for the snowy tree at the back, so when you're going to have a look, you'll see what we've done there. But I did do this in my Facebook the other day. Sometimes you just don't want a whole pick in your tree. They're a bit big, or the colour, you want to mix everything up. So therefore you can make your own picks. And I'm also going to make a garland in our second half, showing you a technique of mixing it all together with these picks. So I'm going to use these. I just had that little bit of off cut, make sure I've got everything, yep. So I'm going to use the snowflake pick and the pink and blue, the colours that we're doing here. And what I normally will do is just start to see if they come off nice and neatly. Sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. No, I'm going to cut them off. If they're tight and you go and keep pulling, you're going to get a lot of broken paper and stuff around it, so it's a bit messier. So sometimes it's just easier to then cut them off. And if you need to, you can add a stem to your piece to get it into the tree. So I'm just going to break this down. And when you do this, you end up making, I'm using 3 picks here, but you're going to end up making 3 or 4 or 5, depending on how big they are, picks in the trees. So while you're using a lot of material, you're actually making multiple items at the end. So it's not costing you more per item or per finished pick as it would if you bought them just separately. These are, I keep calling them cutters. Andrew, I just bought them at Bunnings for me, but you do want to have in your stash a really good set of these so that you can easily cut your thicker stems. And then we'll do this. I just love, often you just can't get the colours you want. That's the thing that we just don't have the choices. You know, there's lots of beautiful stems in one colour, but the only stems that come in different colours are your kind of red, white and green, red and green, red and white, and not much more normally. So this gives you the flexibility to create that yourself. Just do that. And then with this, and then the other thing is I find that if I put that into a tree, I may not want it sticking out as far as that. So even if in fact, I'll show you this one first and then I'll put it together with that. So if I was putting this stem into this tree, that came off nice and easily for me. This is going to be nice and thick. Throw a face. I would just actually do this myself first. And cable ties I'll show you, spray them out. And that way I can put it into there. All right, how much better is that? Great as a tree topper, but this to me, I'm actually surprised they don't make more bunches of picks that you can put into your tree like this, because I think that they just do a much better job of filling it and of just, I don't know, sitting nicely in your tree without kind of the hassle. All right, so we've got our pieces cut here. These ones obviously are pretty short, so they're going to be a bit tricky to work with, but we will use this stem and have a couple of these. I'm going to move that down a bit because obviously I want these stems to be a similar position. Oh, I know what I did when I did it last time. In fact, hang on, I'm just going to do this for a sec. So the other option is to go with 3 on a stem, so this would make you 3. Put that on there. In fact, that stem is long enough. Then do the blue on here. And then we simply cable tie, there we go. Again, if it's going in a light tree, then you'd want to try and get some clear white cable ties. Okay, now, if that's not pretty enough for you, which is fine, some people want everything neat and that's okay, and particularly if your tree is more open and you're going to see it, then we're going to clean up. I'll show you how to clean up the stems here. The other thing is if you want to mix up your balls, just pull some of the branches out. So now the blue is now mixed in with the pink rather than one row of pink, one row of blue, white in the middle. All right, so don't be afraid to kind of play around with it that way. And as I said before, just again, you want to make sure that these are all sprayed out to give you maximum coverage. And that means that if I put that into my tree, it becomes really easy to get that colour put through. It wasn't last, it was the year before I used white berries, champagne gold, and I feel like, no, just the 2 colours. They looked absolutely beautiful together, just really for a soft tree. But let's have a look at how we can make this. Paul, just tell me if you're going to be able to see. Is this okay if I'm holding here? So what I'm going to do, it's actually going into a green tree, so I'm going to use the green. I have bought some of this florist wrap. It's on the website. So if you are doing an order and you want to do something like this, I'm pretty sure I've put it on there. If I haven't, let me know. And all I'm going to do, this florist wrap, I don't know if any of you have ever used it. I'm just going to cut a longer piece. It's probably easier while I hold it up. But you've got to kind of pull it a little bit to make it sticky. And that means I can just wrap this stem right over my cable tie, and it's going to look like a bought stem. And these are the kind of jobs you can do, even if you're not putting your trees up just yet, these are the jobs you can prep before Christmas and have it all ready to go. And you can use these then in your tree, you can use them in your garland. You could even put it into a wreath if you wanted to. So that's one of my favourite go-tos to get picks, because I'm not a fan of the really big picks sticking out of my tree myself. And that was how easy it is to get the stem. You can get the white wrap as well, so if you've got a flocked tree, you can use white wrap on it. Does anyone want me to show you that again, or you all got, it's really easy to do. As I said, I'm going to use a ball pick later and show you a garland technique as well, using that. So with Kara's tree, she's put a lot of shatterproof on up till now, and she's just adding now some of the glass as well. So of course, if you've got, particularly cats, I find seem to be the worst, cats or young children, you may not want glass on your tree. You can tie them on again, but remember the caps, they can be pulled off the cap. So if you still do need to be careful. But just once you've got your base ornaments in there, you can see we've used a lot of the durian balls. They're the balls that kind of look a bit lumpy in there. They're shatterproof balls. They're one of our favourite fillers, but also decorative fillers. They're next level up from plain balls. In this tree we haven't used any ball packs. Oh yes, we've got a little bit of gold. We've used the gold in the ball pack there. And then for Tasha's tree, as we say, because it's the candy theme, it's lots of elements, your colours bringing it together, and also the fact that you've got those flowers. So sometimes people will buy just one ornament of this or one ornament of that, and they kind of go, how do I bring that all together? Well, the key to bringing it all together is to get that foundation. So even if you've got, let's say you've travelled a lot, and I've got this situation at home, we've got a lot of decorations that we've bought when we've travelled or the kids have purchased, so the tree will just look like a bit of a dog's breakfast. If you add a flower, or you add a big bauble, or a big bow, or do two of them, so a diamond of one colour and then a diamond of another, then you can put all your special precious pieces in between, and suddenly your tree will have the same structure of a more designed tree. And again, add the spray to the top of your tree, and you've just sort of taking everything up that extra little element, which looks really good. So this one, so this one we've got a lot of single pieces or just twos, haven't we, Tasha, on your tree? Whereas with Kara's, we've got a lot more of repeat of the same pieces. And the last sort of element is a couple of nutcrackers. So she's got some glass nutcrackers. So again, just those few special pieces, but the tree is kind of brought all together with the colours and the ribbon and so forth to make it look really special without spending a fortune on all fancy ornaments. Excuse me, I'm just going to have a drink. Glennis has just asked how low do you go with your decorating? As long as you see it, Glennis. So if you've got, I like to keep our trees are very low to the ground. I personally like to keep them that way. You can get an extension pole to rise it up 15 centimetres. If you've got limited floor space, that's a great option because you can get more gifts under the tree. So that's another option for you. But in my office, for example, Glennis, where no one sees the bottom part of the tree, there's not that much there. I'll be honest, and as I say, I don't bother with the back of a tree if it's going to be in a corner. That's a personal preference. Some people might just want to do the whole tree, but I tend to stick to what you can see. We are clearly seeing a line here today. I would not have that, neither would the girls, have that at home, I know. We would carry it, even if it was against a wall, to more of a 2/3 coverage, so you just see the side. Or the other thing is you cover a bit more of the top of the tree, because you see more of that, even in the corner, so you might do the whole top, but the back where you don't see it, I don't worry about. Just on space, that just reminded me, when you're looking for a tree or where you're going to put the tree, these sort of trees, as I say, with hook-on branches, so if you've got a pole and then you've got colour coding and you put your trees around, so they're trees we've sold over the years. If you've got limited floor space, of course, you can take a couple of branches out. And in fact, this tree came from my office, and I don't know where I put the branches at the moment. They'll be in my goodie box, which I didn't get to. So there are actually a couple of branches missing out of the back of that because it fits into a corner, all right? If you do that, don't ever strip half the tree because it's going to make it uneven. If you're taking a little bit more out of the back because it's a bit tighter, then I always pull on the front of the tree and sort of feel if it feels stable or not. If I'm pulling and it's coming easily, I'm like, okay, that's not right. Therefore, you can weight the back of the tree. I've used bags of salt from Bunnings. I've found that's quite a good one for putting weights, and then just use your tray skirt over the top of the tree as well. So if your is a hinged tree, then you don't have that flexibility, of course. And just on the base of the tree too, the other thing the girls have been doing, and when you look at any of the photos of our displays that we've been doing in our warehouse with the white background, the fireplace, they've been using table runners as tree skirts. So again, because I know you guys will be looking at more intricate, more unique colours and so forth with your trees, with multiple trees going up. If you can't find a tree skirt and your tree's a bit higher and you need it, you can look at either just getting a piece of fabric from Spotlight or wherever, piece of fur, again, Spotlight, a throw rug works well, a table runner. All right, so don't be restricted to go, I have to have a tree skirt, because remember, once you've got some gifts on there, you don't see it. So it's really sort of a short-term thing, just as you finish off. Or if you don't want anything else there or you can't find it, you can also put some wrapped presents, even fake presents, that you put under the tree. So you might have them wrapped ready every year. They go under, and then when the real presents come, they go away, so that the tree always looks full when you do have that gap. So one of my trees has a bit more of a gap at the bottom. If you want to put a tree up higher too, so if you want to, again, limited space, you can put it up higher, but again, you might look at that weight thing, and you may, whenever we had the trees up on a table at the store, when we had the store, we would always weight the back of the tree as an extra bit of precaution because it's up higher, just to be on the safe side. Okay, where are we up to? No, pick first. Pick. Yes, you've got the berries, yes. And the snowflakes. You can just put them on, yeah. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to add some picks to tree. So in Tasha's tree, she's got the ones that we made up, and Cara made them up the other day, and she's wrapped them all with a white base, hasn't she? So they're all wrapped, yeah. And we did another one, I think the snowy one we didn't wrap, did we, Cara?
Yeah.
They're just, yeah, so when you look at the ones in the snow, you can see we've just put them in there without wrapping the base of them as well. So we've got, again, you work out how many you've got, and then you just sort of divide your tree up into sections and look where there's gaps. But these sprays, I find, really adds that, rather than it all looking a bit tight, it adds a little bit more looseness to the tree. And for Cara, we're using the berry pick, and of course, again, you're spraying those sprays themselves out to give them nice coverage, and you can choose whether you want your berries and your sprays, as we say, to be out further or right into your tree. So it depends on what look you like for your tree, how you position those. Now, the other things that you can use to finish off your tree, and we're going to do some rope on Tasha's tree. Did we bring the red ribbon for you? Oh, we have. Okay, cool. So we've got some thin ribbon. So, as I said, I mentioned the Grinch tree. We've used a thin. I can't remember what it's actually called. It's called a garland, actually, glitter garland. So that's just, again, a wired piece of glitter that you can use to add that dimension, particularly something like the Grinchy style where you want sort of real whimsy in it. We're going to use some rope. That's another way of adding that extra dimension. It's funny how you can finish off. We actually forgot to bring one of the flowers for the mint tree with us, and we had it all looking beautiful. And then but it wasn't quite right, and we added the flower. It added that extra dimension that just finished it off. Even though it's kind of flat, it's just sometimes you kind of, if something's missing, think about whether you can add a little bit more width and airiness to the tree, and that really does make a big difference to how it all comes together. It's nice just sitting back and they do all the work. So the two trees, I've got the Grinch trees here. These are slim 1.8 metre and 1.2 metre trees, new this year. They've got a light flocking on them. So flocking, if you don't know, is when you've got this white effect on it. What you want with flocking, you're always going to lose a little bit of flocking. A good tree will not shed it all in the first season, right? So it's a little bit messier to set up, but it's a small price to pay. Those trees, as you can see, super slim models, which are great. We just thought we'd have a bit of fun with the Grinch, and they have the lights in them. And you can see they're off the ground, but they're not too far off the ground, which is nice too. So you've got room for gifts and so forth, but it's not a massive gap. Then the tree with the mint on it is the 2.28 Cambridge, and it is the regular width, so you can compare the two, the slim to the regular. When you look at a Cambridge, it sort of sweeps in and out. Every second row is inset the tree, so you get that space to set your decorations in the tree, as well as having hanging space on the outer edge of the tree. The back tree is the Norwegian, which is the snowy tree, and that's also pre-lit. And that's actually my new tree, and Catherine, we both bought that tree this year. And then the other beautiful pre-lit has got so many lights in it. It's all about the light singing, which is the 2.1 metre tree down the back there. And I've realised you probably wanted me to explain what was in the trees as well, did you?
I was just interested in the kind of tree.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I will though, what we'll do, I'm going to just take a step off here, Paul, so I'm going to just wander, so don't worry about following me, and I'll just explain the trees to the ladies and gents here. So let's have a look at what we've done in the trees so you can see the different styles, because it's really good. So this tree here, as we said, we knew we'd have kind of one feature tree with the Grinch theme, and then this one, Tash has just used one of the garlands and just fed it through. It's just got a garland over it, and just sort of sprayed the garlands out. We just wanted it whimsical, we just wanted it simple, and then the 3-pick idea for the top of the tree. Yeah. With this one, as I say, you've got the rope to add that extra element. We've put a couple of bows just to get the colours in there. These are brand new. I didn't put them online because I thought you guys might like these. Naughty nice. So we've got them here. And just wanted a bit, again, a spray at the top with a little bit, Grinch and candy theme going on there. You can see, like, that's a 15 centimetre size ball in there. So even though it's a slim tree, we've used, don't be afraid of using some of the bigger ones. They can look really good, the big balls, particularly when you're going for that Grinchy, whimsical style. I've got the really slim tree at home, flocked short tree, and I've just filled it with 15 and 12 centimetre balls before. It looks fantastic. Really quite a bit of fun. So this tree we're actually, I don't know what you guys think, but we thought this looked amazing. So happy with how it all came together. We had this beautiful ribbon and we were like, what can we do with it? And then we started to balance it off with this slightly frosted red, so everything is just soft. So it really is just red, white and green, but a totally different take to red, white and green that you've got there. All right? So what Tash has done when she set this, we decided to set the sign off to the side and just use a bit of a mix of foliage. Sometimes a couple of those loops at the top coming out there, and I haven't got my glasses, so I can't see if Tash has done it on that one. But that's also a nice way of using a bit of ribbon and coming out the top of the tree. And then we worked some of the ribbon. So we brought this tree here with the ribbon in place. We've layered 2 types of ribbon over here. So we've got the wider and then the much narrower ribbon on it. And then so that was just put on there, and then it was all, you probably saw photos of it, all glad wrapped to be brought here, and then put all the decorations on. As I said, we originally did this we didn't have the flowers here, so we grabbed them yesterday because somehow they didn't come, and it just made it really pop, the extra element. But these have got some beautiful feature ornaments in here in the 12.5 centimetre. These aren't online yet. Again, I wanted you guys to see them first, so they've only just arrived. So a few of these things that you're seeing them before anyone else does. We've also just brought the sleighs here because remember, you can use things like sleighs, the nutcrackers we've got down there. You can put elements like that. We've got our balls here. Put a few decorations at your tree as well to finish off the look of your tree if you want to. Or you could have a small table, if you've got a table that you can sit at the back so your ornaments can go around, but you can, sorry, your presents can go around, but you can therefore have your gifts down there and then have some sort of feature piece which goes with a theme if you want to on your tree. Your candy or your nutcracker or Grinch piece or whatever it might be that you're working with. So yeah, this one, because I've seen the snow before this, I've got to say this looks, I think it looks amazing. Lots of glass on this tree. All right, so we've mainly used glass, but there are a few shatterproof pieces on there as well, really soft. Then this one, we've done, again, this is actually a garland. So the white balls that you see in here are garlands. And the garlands that Cara, we used 3, didn't we, lovely? Yeah, 3 garlands, they are $130 each, all right? But that filled the tree with balls to begin with. And if your tree was green and you wanted more of a snowy feature, then something like a big ball garland with lots of balls on it is a great way to go. A string with all the balls coming off that you can position, you know, just sort of stretch out across there. So that gave us the base. And again, Cara's used some of the nice 15 centimetre size balls because we wanted this to be a big full tree that we've got in there. And then the other thing we've done in this tree is tied some bigger pieces in. All right, so you just, you know, on the snowman there, you just have some bind wire. You find where you can actually attach something around, you know, a scarf or, you know, around their arm if it's a elf and so forth. So you can tie it onto your tree. So you've got a piece down here and another one down here. As I said, that kind of element of the 2s can work just as well as 3s. And then we put a couple of ladders. And again, it's kind of centered this way. So when you come and have a look at it later, she's got 2 signs that she's used as part of the tree topper on there to finish that off. And then, as I say, when we did it all, then we added these sprays, which really, do you agree, Carol, when we added those sprays, it just makes everything pop, yeah. So taking that time is fantastic. Also the little packs of snowflakes, and Cara's going to use them in the red on her tree. So they are put in sort of at the end just to fill gaps. They're only $29.95 for a pack of 12. So a really nice filler piece that you can use on your tree. And having fun, if you do like elves, have fun with them. You can, you know, you could have him hanging upside down off, you know, from one leg, you know, whatever you want to do with them. So, you know, she's got him hanging out the side on that one. And this one was just all about glass and lights. So it's so soft and pretty, lots of clear glass, lots of just a bit of champagne gold on there, pearls, pale pink, the pale pink birds, and then the tree itself, which obviously sings because it's got, I don't know, something like 8,000 lights. This is effectively a tree made of cluster lights and then flocked.
How many cluster lights?
I think it's 8,000 off the top of my head, yeah. Yeah. So this is 2.1 metre. So there was nothing, Cara, there was no technique other than filling it. We basically, when you have 4 balls, you spread your first lot of 4 balls over. And then you've got another variety ball and you spread them around. Because they're all the same sort of size, it was more about just spreading out the individual pieces onto the tree. And yeah, very, very elegant. And then just added again a couple of the champagne snowy snowflakes just to finish that off as well. So first of all, you've got the berries now in the trees and the sprays through the trees, and you can see how they really do just add extra elements. And then what Cara's doing with hers is she's using a thin ribbon. So we're using the 2.5 centimetre ribbon. Again, it's wide, it's velvet. We love to add that element again just to give it that little bit of body. And then with the candy tree, we're going to use the rope. So the rope is, again, one of our favourites. Rope comes in, we could have chosen pink and white or blue and white, but the white itself I like when you've got a lot of colour because it also just sort of finishes it off and brings it together without adding more. Sometimes it can be too chaotic if you've got too much going on. So having those, again, those repeat elements help to kind of centre that off. And with the rope, you can have it sort of stretched out a little bit, or you can, I've seen people just have little curls. Oh yeah, so you can, you know, you can run it like that if you want to off the tree, or you can stretch it into your tree like that. You could even stretch it further if you want. And just like your ribbon, I tend to, if I'm stretching it like that, you're just kind of diagonaling it through the tree and having a few. Don't be afraid when you're doing anything that is a repeat. You can see, how many berries do you reckon you use, Cara?
Oh, there was probably 12, 13,
Yeah.
14.
So say when you do have a repeat of a pick that you're going to use at the end of the tree, then you really do need to be looking at, I mean, these are slim trees, half trees, 12. You need to be looking at sort of 20, 25 quantities if you want it to be a consistent overall look. All right, so sometimes that can be something that we will think, oh, I only need 7, and then you put it on the tree and it's like, oh, it doesn't look like that photo I saw. It's sometimes about how much we repeat the pieces. Again, with the rope, I would normally, how many are you using on this? Oh, you got this one, my one you gave me. So you got 5. So that's a slim tree. So again, a wider tree, you're going to be looking at least sort of 8 to 10 of those if you want it to be strong. You can just have a couple of whirls. So if you just wanted to have 2 pieces whirling off like a little feature, that would be fine. But if you do want it to be that strong repeat, that's something that you've got to consider as well. The other thing that Cara added into her tree while we were having a look at the other trees was those snowflakes. So when you add the snowflakes, Cara, could you just pass me one snowflake out? Thanks, lovely. So with the snowflakes, why I like them is they just fit in the tree. You don't have to string anything in. So they just sit in the foliage, and you can have them sort of sitting in the foliage, sort of slightly hanging out of the tree again to give that little spray effect, which I think works really well with it, and that's why I think they're a really good option. The other thing is when you do look at lights, it's also worth checking if you think it's something you might add to. Think about whether it's us or someone else that you're going to buy that you know you can get more of down the track. So if you buy something, at Bunnings, you may not find that you can get the same thing to match it the next year. LED lights, I don't know if you know, is actually a man-made colour. So the warm white lights change depending on the supplier. All right, so, and some people will call it warm white and it's quite yellow, and others will call it warm white and it's quite cool. So you want to try and match. If you have a problem where you've bought 2 sets of lights and they don't match and you're going, oh, I'm going to have to buy more, then put those other lights in the middle. Use them in the tree, but don't try and do the sectioning. Put it in the middle so you get that extra bit of light. No one's going to notice then. The other thing I used to do with my old lights when I would change my look is I used to have a fireplace that was obviously not used in summertime. I would just lay my lights in a bundle with the lights on in a fireplace. Something like that. So you can always, you think about where else you can use your pieces. If you're going to move them on from the tree, can you move them onto a garland or to a wreath or a tabletop piece and so forth that you're going to work with as well. Any other questions? How are you doing there? Are we ready to go voila?
Almost. Are we ever ready?
I was going to say, and like you guys, oh yeah, okay, so Cara's just saying she's got a little bit of extra ribbon and she's just going to put that into tree like a tail, so it just creates that extra, use it and you can make small loops. All right, so you've got the materials, you might as well use it. And just like you, and well, not me so much, because Catherine will say, I'll just go, no, that's it, it's done. But you've just got to sort of sometimes step away, and if it's not quite working for you, maybe just step away, don't take it all off. Give it a moment to sit and see what then is missing. As I say, if you follow those processes, it works. The other thing that I always do at home, and I highly recommend, is I set my tree up one day. I may light it even the same day, but I decorate it on another day. Because then decorating is fun. Yeah. There's nothing worse than just at the end of the day going, oh, yeah, that's right. Put your favourite music on, or if you can get the family involved, might have stepped away. I get to do it all. So what we have some designs already that are kits on the website, but everything we could do, we can create to a kit for you. So if there's a look that you see here today or something else you've seen on our site, and you say, if you've got your tree already, say, I want that, then what I do, so I do all the kind of prepping of the stock for you. I'll put together a suggestion based on what you're asking for. Also budget, I mean, everyone has a budget. So we work to the budget. So please, if you're thinking of doing something like that, it's really important to just go, right, this is what I would like to spend. It doesn't mean we have to spend it all, but it means that if we need more filler baubles for the first year, we can do that and have fancier baubles come down the track, or if you've got a bigger budget, you can have more of the fancy baubles as well. So yeah, absolutely, we can work out what you want, and then I do a draft so you can see the ornaments and you can go, yes, I like that one, no, I don't like that one. Then narrow down, and at that point we don't even look at quantities, it's more about just making sure we're on the same page as far as the styles go. And then the girls will come in, we talk together, we can create the kit, and then the girls will come and get it all set up for you. Yeah, and then if you want extra things, you can help. The girls sometimes have just a small amount that they carry, so they're not a Christmas shop in the boot, but they do try and carry some extra pieces. The amount of glitter you probably feel like you are already. But they do try and carry a few pieces, so therefore if you're looking at it and go, actually no, I really do, I should have gone a bit more, then they may have that, and then they can help you with those as well. And then you can add garlands, wreaths down the track or whatever. Or if you've got just a tree that you do yourself, then they can come and just do the wreaths and garlands if you want anything like that.
So with these kits, like if I've got time to do the tree myself, can I just say
Yep.
one year, just get the kit?
Absolutely.
And then just
Yeah. Anyone who wants to talk, so I do the kit creation myself. So basically just, it's really helpful if you say this is the style, this is the price, and this is the tree size I've got. If you've already got a tree, then we can go for it and get that organised. And that's what I do all the time for both home and corporate. If you have a business and you need a tree, then we can help you with that as well. It's normally just a simpler version of what we do for our home trees. Yeah. And then and the other thing is, if you've got a tree that you just isn't coming together for you, if you're really struggling, if you've got a photo of that, then I might be able to say, okay, how about we just add this flower, or how about we just add this ball to it? I think you need this many for it. So we can work on that for you as well. I just want to say the hugest thanks to the lovely Cara and the lovely Tasha. You get a set of trees too.
Well, thank you.
Talented girls who have been so helpful. All right, well, I think we're now wrapping up session 1. I hope you've enjoyed the first session. This is actually a nutcracker cookie jar. Taken the lid off. I've actually glued a piece of foam into this. So this one, therefore, you can't, it's going to have a bit of foam at the bottom, so you wouldn't be wanting to put your cookies in afterwards. But if you wanted to be able to reuse it, you could fit more foam in tightly around it to make it compact and hold its shape. The key with your foam is that you don't want it wiggling around. So you either want it glued, or you're going to need to put, as I said, other filler pieces on the side, because once you've got all this in there, it's pretty heavy. So you don't want your top to, be falling side to side once you've got it made. All right, so we're going to make that piece. Then I'm going to do a ball garland using the ball pick, show you how to do that. Then I've got a green garland to show you, and if time permits, a wreath. But as I mentioned, the way we do the wreath is very similar to the garland. So if we don't get to that, I'm sure, I can give you enough tips quickly that you can whip it up at home. All right, so let's get going on this guy. So I actually saw this online. Someone had done it overseas. I don't know if it was a cookie jar or if it was originally made overseas as a planter. And I loved the idea, so I thought, why not give it a go? I'm going to try and work backwards. In fact, I'm going to get that in the middle, so hopefully we've got the best shot here for you guys to see afterwards. Occasionally I'll need to turn it around to see how I'm going, and forgive me if I'm slightly crooked, because it's always a bit tricky doing it on the side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with a few pieces of spray. I haven't spoken at all today about our cedar spray. This is one of my favourite picks to use as filler in anything I do, because you can break it into smaller pieces. So there's the big piece there, and I've just broken off a section of it. You could also, if you had a green tree and you wanted it to make it look more soft and flocked, you could put these in on your branches. You would need a lot, obviously. You're not going to get a flocked looking tree if you put 6 picks in. But it is a way, if you like the look of flock trees but you don't want a new tree, or you really love the tree you've got, you can simply add some of these onto the tree. If you're putting it into a tree, just remember with everything else, you do want to give it, again, a little bit of shape. So the middle bit of this has got wire. So again, you can just see how you're going to lift that up so that you've got body to it. Everything's not flat. So first of all, what I want to do with this guy is I just want to put a few pieces out the side, because it's nice to have some spray coming out and sort of outward, so it's not just all going up like that. And let's see what we can create working backwards. I should have tried working backwards when I practiced. And I'm going to I would normally do the back spray first when I'm looking at it, but of course it's going to make it even harder for me to work. So we'll kind of work that a little bit back to front. And you just, as I said, you just want to kind of shape these things so that they spray out, and then cut off. There they are. Cut these as you need them. And trying to leave yourself enough of a stem that you can actually attach it. Let's see if we can make this one separate. No. So sometimes you just got to work with what you've got. And you can do this, obviously this is the nutcracker jar. You can do this in a bucket, a white bucket. You could do it in any kind of container that you've got at home that use just sort of a good size for a spray. This is going to be quite a big piece that I make. You can do exactly the same format, but in a smaller size as well. All right, so we're going to actually have, I'm going to sort of work with the flower in there, then we've got the candy elements as the main pieces in there, and then the spray coming out the back. So let's just cut this one down a bit. I do love these sprinkly flowers. And a flower is also a great way to fill something like this up, right? So you've suddenly got a big element there. With these sort of items that are foam, so when you get an item at home, you can feel when it's foam based, you're kind of going, how do I use that? So I'm going to actually turn that into a pick. All right, so I've already just used my scissors at home because, as I said, I trialled this. I've just cut the fabric here, and then I'm going to put in a pick, and that means that I can, actually I'm going to go with this slightly shorter one. That means I can then have this piece coming right out the front as a real feature piece out there. All right, so it gives you a lot more things to play with when you think about the fact that you've got ornaments that turn into picks. So again, that was an ornament, done exactly the same thing. I've cut a little hole in the fabric and just stuck the pick up. There's all the fabrics coming off. That no one will see that one once we finish. All right, so I'm going to get that one. As I said, it's a bit tricky when I don't know what I'm doing here with working backwards. This one I could do a pick as well, but at the end I'm just going to actually put that in and see how it sits, because there'll be enough other materials there to work that into place. These are hanging ornaments, but for the purposes of this, I might be able to, they're sprung loaded, so I'm just going to take that off so it's not going to be in my way. And all I'm doing with this piece is filling, obviously, from the low up high, trying to get shape. So the ones that don't work quite so well is when you tend to have everything coming up straight. So if you have it coming down a little bit at the side and then kind of triangle around, it tends to work the best. Let me just see how I'm going there. All right, so what elements? What I want to do before I get too far, I cut up some of these picks into smaller pieces, and I just want actually some of these really sweet ones to be at the front as well. So these are just quite small, but they're great to make sure that you've got that sprinkle effect coming all the way through. And if I need to, I've got a second one that I can put through my the back of the piece as well. You could this, because he's got a face on it, it's likely to sit in a corner or against a wall. So therefore, again, you don't need to worry about the whole back. Some people really love to do everything. That's fine. If you wanted to do everything, you could even just do, or I shouldn't say everything. If you want to kind of midway it, have your foliage that you have drooping down, going all the way around the back. And then you could just have a little bit, that will be enough filler that no one's going to see that you haven't got any sort of decorations at the back, because it's all about the face on this particular piece. But if it was in the middle of the table, then I would probably be doing it almost opposite each other. So if this was going to be in the middle of the table, I'd have one big piece here, I'd have one big piece here. Reverse them. So then I'd have, if I'm doing my ice cream, one piece here, and then I'd have my cake coming out here, to try and just keep, it makes it even and easy. Again, if you're kind of doing the opposites as you work through when you're doing something that's all the way around. I'm going to get these bigger pieces in here because I just need to see how everything's going to look. So I want to have these kind of guys in the back. So I'll go with this one here, I think. And my lollipop. I can push them in nice and hard. Yep. That's fine. I'm actually going to just bend this stem a little bit. I'm also using, I normally use the green foam, that's the wet foam. It's a softer foam. I happen to have the grey foam. I find the grey foam, it does hold everything in place probably for longer year-wise. I find I'm often really pushing hard to get the pieces in there, whereas the green one's a little bit easier to do. So particularly if you're not going to be keeping the display for multiple years, then the green foam you can use just as well as the grey that I'm using here. Then I'm going to put, let's just see how this guy looks in here. Just going to sit that there for the moment. Oh, no, needs another piece in there first. All right, let's go with this one here. So again, I'm just going to take this off. If you can't pull it out, you can always just cut it off. There we go, had a little hook on the end. And again, I just love the idea that they're spraying out so that you get as much depth as possible on the piece. So we've got, you can see this shape going on. Makes it super easy when you're using something like this. You could do the same as this with flowers and some greenery and some berries, but if you've got candy theme, peppermint theme, Grinch theme, it does make it easy to create a pretty stunning piece if that's a theme that you're working with. I'm going to use one of these on either side, and I always try and have them at different heights. All right, so again, you're not sort of balancing everything up exactly the same to each other. Let me just see how we're going there. So then I feel like I've got a little bit of a gap in the middle here, and I'm just going to put, just while I can see, I'm just going to get this piece in here. It's actually just sitting in there, but that's just sort of filled out that middle, right? So I don't need to worry about a whole lot of other pieces. And if I still want to try and get this in, I can see if that will help it. Might help or hinder. This is where you're all thumbs. That sort of holds that then place. So you don't have to put the picks in every piece, but you do have to have enough holding all the elements together. And like you'll see with the next piece I do, and we did even with these trees, using the picks in smaller pieces makes the whole decorating process so much easier to do. And then all I'm going to need to do to finish off is I've got a couple of these sprays. So I'm going to go with the full spray to begin with. And then I've got just 2 pieces of the spray coming out to the side, and then I've got this little bit here. And I do need to have one more. I'm going to have to cut one more of these. I can't have it that off centre. So just putting a little bit more onto this side so it's a bit more even to the other side. And that's it. I think a table piece like that is one of the elements that can look amazing at home. Bring together, let's say you put something like that and you've got your nutcrackers next to it. Bring together a scene together, and if you're wanting to do something like that and your colours, you know, you're not candy themed, for example, then what I would do is I often will have a flower out the front like I've got there. You know, you might have some berries hanging out the side and then a bit more of a spray at the back. So you can still get this effect. Obviously not without using all the decorative pieces that we've used on the candy piece here. Any questions on how we make something like that? I can't wait to see all your photos when you've done, when you're all creating these things for me. This would be awesome. All right, oh actually I've got one of these cut, that's got to go in. I can't waste this beautiful pick. See how that's coming down quite low? I really like that. Anyone who's followed me on Facebook Live knows I struggle with what colours I'm going to do this year. And the decision was made when these picks came in because I just love them. So, we're going to be using my colours and starting my prep today. A little bit of cheating. All right, so okay, so what I'm doing here while I'm talking, I started with the full size pick and have broken it down into quite small elements, and I'll just group them into their colours so I can work, and I've got to make sure I work in the shot here for Paul, but I can keep that all out of the shot there. So let me just quickly get these into some sort of order so I can show you. So as I said, sometimes you just can't get the colours, particularly if you're doing something like this. It's really tricky to get the colours you want for your table or for your garlands or whatever. So create them yourself. And this is a great way to do that. The ball picks were just so luscious when I saw them, the colours. I don't know, my home has a bright, beautiful, bright piece of art in the hallway, and this year this will really look fabulous against that. I often feel for Christmas time I'm hiding it because, you know, all the Christmas colours don't go with it, but this year will be a great match. I don't know if Mum's still here. Oh, your Mum's still here. We don't know where Christmas is yet this year, Mum. I have to make sure someone comes and sees it this year before it all gets packed away. All right, so, and I'll pull apart a pick for you, but I'll just get this into some sort of order. If you had a nice piece of thin dowel or a metal rod or something like that, you could work with that. I didn't, and I just started working with this at the warehouse because I wanted to get prepped. So all I've done to create my base is use some of my offcuts of my picks. All right, and that's what I'll show you we're going to do, and I've wrapped them, and we're going to do that on the other side. What I want to do is kind of work out where my middle, because I'm going to work both ends, because obviously the picks kind of spray out that way, and then I can, in the middle, just kind of bunch them up and fill the gap in the middle, rather than them all facing the one direction and then the other end looking a little bit funny. So this isn't quite long enough for what I want, so let's just attach another piece of pick, and that will probably be sufficient for my dining table. So all I'm doing is just going to cable tie these two pieces together as always, you do need to put a little bit of pull and tightness to keep it all nice and tight together. It's not exactly straight, it doesn't matter. What you do want to try and do is you don't want to have one piece up like that, and I don't know if I'm making sense, but you want your joins all flat. So that it sits as flat as possible on the piece. As I say, if you've got a nice piece of wood that you can use or a piece of metal, that's even better, but you can make do with the offcuts that you're going to have. You could also, I'm going to actually do 2 cable ties because I can still feel there's a bit of movement there. I would use cable ties in preference to using bind wire or anything because you're going to get a much stronger hold on this, because you don't want to be picking it up on Christmas Day if you need to clear the table and having your piece fall apart. Right, so that's the advantage of doing something like this too, that it's very easy, and that's also the advantage of having a piece of greenery that has a base on it. So our centrepiece has a metal rod, and you'll see, I'll show you with our green garland how you can just add a piece to that as well, so that if it's on the table, you can easily pick it all up and move it to your buffet when you've got everything going out on the table on Christmas Day. All right, so then I'm just going to cut these off, and once again I'm going to use my florist bind and simply wrap this up. So to start with, you just got to kind of pull it to get the stickiness going, and then, in fact, I'm just going to cut a bit off. It's going to be easier. And then I'm just, because this one I can't I've got all that, I can't really move it. It's obviously going over these cable ties. I'm going to do that just a couple of times to sort of disguise that, make it tight. And then I'm using green bind wire as well. So obviously you can see the bind wire on the balls, but if you think about when you buy a bought garland, whatever the colour, you normally, if you look at it, a bought garland is made exactly the same way as this. It's just someone else has done it for you overseas. Oops, I've got to fix up my lumpy bit there. And then we'll start on the end. And I won't finish this off just because you'll be sitting here watching me do the same thing, but I'll make sure you know all the steps that you need to do, and then I'll show you the finished piece. Pressure's on to get it finished now. And I'll have that done. It won't get done this week. We've got family things that we have to deal with this week. So, all right, and just at the end, just sort of try and pull it a little bit tighter, get that stickiness, wrap it around and rip it off. All right. So, let's go to the pick so you can see what I do. Now, the one thing I found, the most time-consuming thing about this whole process was I pulled all these picks apart because I did want them nice and small because I really want to mix up my colours, and I just pull them down a little bit if I can to give me a bit of a stem on there, and I'll just do it for a few. Again, you don't need to see me pull apart a whole stem. If you can't, if it's not letting you pull, then you can just cut up higher. It just means you're going to bind tighter and closer together where you actually attach it to the stem of your piece. But what I found, which wasn't very convenient, every one of these pieces, when you cut them, has the big ball in the middle. So when you're trying to put a whole lot of pieces together and the big balls are in the middle, all you end up with is a mass of these big balls in the middle and they don't sit very well. So what I did the other day, something to do in front of the TV, is wiggle them and swap them over. All right, so these are all just glued in and then stuffed onto the end there. If you end up, when you do that, with an end that's a bit too long, just trim it off. Sometimes you might lose a ball, sometimes you'll pull a pick out and some of the balls have come off. This is all you have to do to fix it. Now, when I attach the different picks together, I don't have that problem, all right? So that was the thing that took me quite a while to kind of prep through for today. So, as I said, I'm doing this with multicolour. If you love the look of this, but you're only doing it in silver or gold or the two, you can do that as well, or you can even do it single colour if you want to. So you don't have to go with lots, but for mine, I've decided to go with all these brights. So to create it, we need our bind wire. Oh, it keeps coming undone. I just like to cut off a piece. In fact, because I'm left-handed, I'm going to turn everything around because I would prefer to work from this end. Oops. And I'll just move these around a bit so I can see and reach them. So I found the best way, the way I ended up doing this to get this kind of coverage is, and first of all, before I go there, if one comes off, just find an empty stem and put it back on. Because it's all multicolour, it doesn't matter. And the other thing I realised is when I have got one here. I realised that I didn't use any light green and I wanted to. So I just thought, that's fine. I'm just going to pull apart a light green and mix this in here. So if you want to add another colour, you can just do that. Yes, my stem is different, but who cares because it's all multicolour anyway. So that's a way because it was actually when I saw the trees that I'm going to put with this, I thought I'm going to go with the hot pink and the lime green trees, so I decided I needed to have lime green added into that. So that's another way of solving that problem. First of all, we want to just attach our piece of bind wire. And I tend to just, as tightly as I can, again, tie it on and twist it around. Really does help. I know, I see when we've done classes, you know, if you're doing deco mesh, if you're doing anything, tying it tightly, everything you do will help it all sit so much better. And then I found the best way to do this was I would work with 2 picks in one bunch and then 3 picks in the next. So that gave me kind of the 2 picks in the spray and the third one sort of every second row kind of more in the middle of it, and that was how I got the coverage here. And just take your 2 picks, put them together, and in fact, being the end, I'm going to go with a third one. Let's just... I'm going to cut that too short now. That's all right, we can still use it. And then tie this on to here. So I'm not making bunches beforehand, I'm just tying them on in groups onto my base and wrap that around a couple of times. And then you can spray all them out and you can do all of that at the end, you don't have to worry too much about it. Then you're going to go and get obviously another, so pink's a fair way away, those 2 this time. I'm coming down 2.5 an inch roughly. If you want it closer together, if you want more fullness, you could make that gap a little bit smaller, but I felt that that was kind of a good coverage on there. And just wrap that round. And all you're doing is building this process all the way down. And I'll get to, what I might do is just do a little bit in the middle here just so you can see. So I'll do some here and then we'll kind of work out what we do in the middle. Because everyone who watches me on Facebook Live knows I try and learn this as we go and I haven't tried the middle bit, so let's give it a whirl. So I'm going to come down, as I said, about 1 inch there and tightly tie that on there. All right. And you can, these are long enough that you get quite a nice coverage that way as well, I thought, for the pick lengths. So let's just get down to pretend we've done the whole thing so we can then do the middle. I'll need another piece of wire. Has anyone tried anything like this? Yeah. Oh yeah, that looks good. Yeah. All right, so let's pretend we'll start at this point here and we'll pretend we've gone the whole way.
Can we just ask
Of course. Oh, good question. Excellent question. I thought of that. I've cut up 2 of each picks to make this that I've got here. So probably about 3. Let me see if I can give you a more exact, I'll try and work out how many bunches I've got on there versus how many balls, so I can give you an exact answer, and I'll somehow send that through as an email. As I said, unfortunately we've got some family things later this week, well not unfortunately, but that I have to deal with, so I'm just not around at the end of the week like I would have liked. So if it does take me just a little bit longer, I will get that because, no, thank you. But you all promised to share your photos though when you do. Silence. Don't be afraid, we all learn from each other. Most of my ideas come because, you get inspired by what other talented people are doing and give it a whirl. Okay, so I've done 3 on that bunch, so I'll do 2 on this. Moving it down. I'm just going to finish, just because I've got 2 pieces of string now in my way, I'll just finish this one off. The bind wire and any florist wire holds itself quite well too, so you only need to sort of do 1 knot and then twist it around the pole and it'll be fine. It shouldn't come apart. So what are we up to? We need a turquoise and we need a green. And that was 2, so we need a 3rd. All right, so we're getting closer to the middle here to work out what to do. And I think what we're going to end up doing is just making the stem shorter and working in a bigger bunch that we can then bend the balls back to fill the gap. They're going to hate all the glitter. They'll never get the glitter out of here now. With this job, the warehouse is just teeming with it. All right, so if I do, I'm actually going underneath at the moment. What I'm doing is just wrapping it slightly underneath the other bunch, so that I can get in closer to it. Can you see that from the screen? This ball? Yep. Yeah. So I've just kind of pushed that to the back a bit, and that just gives me that extra bit of room. Oh, balls are falling off. I started trying this by just tying it onto a piece of bind wire. You could see garlands done on soft things, and I just found it was all too awkward, and that's why I decided to make it this way instead. And I think we just need to cut some of these shorter, that we can use right in the middle. And then we will do some and green. Oops, get a nice long one. So I'm obviously bunching a lot more in here. And I feel like at the end when I finish this, I'm going to do another bunch out there. So let me just get this one on, and then we'll just play and make sure it works, and then we're happy. Yeah, I think having a little bit of shorter one, there's some of those shorter ones in the middle just to hide our little bit of join was kind of good. And that. The balls themselves aren't on particularly long stems, and when you look at the whole piece, they've just got a longer stem at the bottom. They don't have more balls down here. So meaning it's not.
I'm just thinking about last week.
Oh yeah. So I was just trying to work out if you'd have enough extra coverage doing it that way. I think by the time we just move these around, it will be okay. But you could certainly, I'd give everything a whirl. See what works. You know, everyone's there's always ways. You start one way, and then you find a technique that makes it a bit easier. To do. And I'm just going to wind this up here, and then I haven't got this tight yet, ladies and gentlemen, but let's just see how we go as far as being able to just find exactly what our garland is doing here. So we want to have the pieces coming out like they do on the other side, sprayed out. And it needs, I wish I had pink. I'm just going to put this green. Just needs another couple, and I think it just needs to be underneath, coming out from the underneath. Because as you said, they're long enough under there. Where's that piece of greenery? And once you've done this a couple of times, I find cutting the bind wire like I did, so there's kind of usable lengths, and then you just, when you get to the end, just tie it off. Makes it a lot easier to do. You can see a few of the balls are coming off as we go. Don't worry, they can just be put back on at the end. And now, if we get those ones, because we put a couple that were sort of underneath, yeah, that's better. So those ones that I just put on underneath now can be pulled around to fill it out. So I feel, once we actually fiddle with all these balls to position them, that's how I do the middle. Just work it into the same and work a couple underneath when you're tying them on as well as the top to get that last bit of filler on it. And then you can just put them on the table. What I forgot to bring was my beautiful hot pink trees, and I was just thinking I'm going to sit them on the table and put some trees through around it, and that's it. On a table runner, because you do have, actually you don't have much wire on this, but I think a table runner always looks great on the table anyway. But I love using the different trees to finish it off. And that also means that you've got a nice big piece, but you've got enough room on your table to also feed the family or get the drinks on, the important thing, which works really well. So that is our ball garland, which I thought was pretty cute. Thank you. What I wanted to show you next was an idea I saw in a demo that I watched online, and I can't remember who it was who did it, but I was like, oh my gosh, why haven't I done that before? Awesome, thanks darling. And basically when I hang my garland, I don't like it that it kind of droops at different points. Like if it's meant to be straight, I want it to be straight, or you have to put a lot of hooks up. So this woman simply used a frame to create her garland. I've got two garlands here because I'm going to do a double garland. So we just measured our front door at home and have got a piece that's the length of the top of the door, and then another piece that's the length of the side of the door that we want. Now I'm using whatever, I don't know, is this 1 inch wood? Yeah, does that sound about right? Piece of wood from Bunnings, that's, you want to check that this is actually a little bit bigger than what I thought it was going to be, so it does just fit in our hooks, but you do want to see if you have permanent hooks that it's not so big that it won't fit in there. For ours, because it's front door, I've measured them halfway point because I'm going to run it down both sides, and I'm going to have a piece of wood on the side as well, because then it will sit nice and framed around the door. It also allows me to double up the garland if I wish to make it even bolder and fuller. So for this year, what I want to do is have the garland as the absolute feature of the front of the house. So what I've done is marked, as I said, the middle point and cable tied my garland on here. What you don't want to do at this stage is do too many cable ties. And I was actually thinking about this in bed last night because, of course, I haven't done this. You don't want to over cable tie at this stage because when you're tying your balls and things on, you don't really want to have to worry about tying it into the frame as well. It just makes it a little bit more complicated. So you just want enough that it's holding its position, and then when you're done, you can put everything in place. I also then just cut off the end of my garland because I'm going to have the same 1.2 metres on both sides, so I can cut it off. It means when you hang it, you know your centre point because your piece of wood is going to fit on the hooks that are already there, so you've not got that problem of moving the garland left and right, backwards and forwards like we normally do. So with the leftover piece of garland, oh, I thought I put it here somewhere. There it is. You know, that could be used as filler foliage if you're making a tabletop piece. It could be used just simply fluffed up as a base to make a tabletop piece. All right, so there's lots of ways you can use it. You will have seen with our demos in the fake fireplace, we put this down, we just got an off-cut of garland that we put in there, and we put other decorations in there. All right, so you can use these off-cuts, so just keep them and think about how you can use it. Quite often if I'm doing a tabletop, I'll cut off the individual tips in here and just use that to give me some green filler without having to buy another pick for it. So that's what to do there. So at this stage, just to start the process, as I said, I've just cable tied in the end. I'm just going to move this towards me a little bit, and I want to put my second garland in place with you. Garlands often have these ends. This is our Alberta garland. It's 2.7 metres long. We've got a big double door, front door, so that's why it's a long piece at the top of it. I just cut the end off there. I'm not going to over fluff it at this stage because I'll be putting a lot of balls in and so forth, playing with it. I can take that out, I can fluff around it at the end. All right, and just so that I can, all you want to do is have the foliage on one of the garlands sort of up a little bit, so then you can fit the other garland in next to it. And these are cable ties, so here, these ones. Again, I think I said the cable ties also came from the electrical supply place, so I found them the cheapest option. So you just need to make sure, obviously, when you get to the end of this, you want to have a piece of foliage that you actually that's on the other side of your cable tie, so it's not going to just slide off. All right. So I'm just going to cable tie that onto here. All thumbs. Get my first piece pretty tight, and I'll get my middle tight. The rest of it I can tighten up afterwards. I'm just moving all this foliage to the side. Now you don't have to do a double. I've done plenty of garlands where I do a single. I just thought, you know, you often see it around department stores and things, that really full garland, and so I just thought I'd give it a whirl this year and do it a little bit differently. And bring that up to the same point here. And get that. The hardest thing with the cable tie is making sure you haven't got it upside down when you go to tie it on. Try.
When I tied my garland onto the stairs, when I was going to put the pin I was really worried about the lights.
Oh yeah.
Green, you know, so the colour sort of
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Yeah. So before you tie this tight, you do want to make sure that you haven't got too much of a gap. You know, you don't want to have your garland kind of doing this. So you do need to have it sort of taut enough that you feel like your garland's going to sit nice and flat against here. And then, once you've done that, let's get that in as tight as you can. So now we've got a garland that is really thick and full. You can see how big it is just by just doing this a little bit, and that means that I can fill it up with lots and lots of pieces to make it look amazing. So I'll just run this side down to the same point and cut it, and then we'll do a little bit of decorating on it. So again, I'm just moving all the foliage over so I can easily tie it onto my frame. And this is what I was saying too with your greenery for your table. If you want to use a garland base on your table, put a piece of wood underneath it, and then it's going to mean you can take the whole thing and you can pick it up and move it off the table on Christmas Day, because that's the hardest thing about having a green garland. It's not very movable. Just get this tag off. Got a little tag on here that doesn't want to move. You mean as far as the deck? Oh, you mean would it be easier to put both on at the same time or one? Yeah, it probably was, but I wanted to show. Yeah, exactly right. You could very easily just. Glenys was just saying you could easily just have your foliage sort of bent into the directions, opposite each other, and cable tie them both on at the same time, for sure. Or, as I say, you can just go with one and it's still going to look good. And I don't think, you could be pedantic and you could paint the piece of wood, depending on what your frame is around your door and so forth, or the colour of the green. I don't think when we finish we're going to see it, so I didn't bother. And I'll just get it down to here and do a cable tie on this, and then I'm going to cut the end off so it's not quite as unmanageable. And then we're going to decorate. Garlands are always great if you can get yourself a nice big table too, bench to work with. Okay. All right. Okay, so then we've got our frame, and the other thing you can do, of course, when you're working with two halves like this is when you're lighting. So with these new connectable lights, now the lights that I showed you before, those cluster lights, 6 metres, and they're $49.95 a string, and they will connect together. Yeah, so they're really well priced for what they are, and that's what I'm going to use in this. So let me find them. Now, I normally light beforehand, even though I'm going to cover it quite heavily. You're not going to use as many lights if you light it afterwards. It's personal preference. And so this, just trying to remember, I think that's 1.8 and then that's 1.2. So they're not too far off even. As far as I'm just thinking in my head about how I'm going to make sure my lights are even coverage on here. So first of all, I want to make sure that the end that's going to connect is in the middle. There, and then I'm going to get this end here. Right, so you want to make sure your lights come all the way down to the end. I tend to just unwind the lights just at the beginning and the end, and then otherwise I use the foliage of the branches to put them in place. But I like to just at the beginning kind of get them in location there. And now we've already tested these. I'm leaving them off because I just think it won't show up so well in the picture. But don't turn them on without testing them. So we've got a about 2.4 metres of garland and 6.5 metres of lights, which is a really good ratio. And of course we've got thicker garland, so we do want that extra bit because we're going to be working it through a wider area. If you wanted to, you could go even a third because these are connectable. You could even go with more lights if you were doing a double like this. So working on this, give me a second, I've got a tape measure here and I'll just quickly check this length here. Oh, they're almost the same, so I can kind of find the middle point of these lights. And if I haven't already found my middle point, all I do is I'm just going to get both ends, hold them in front of me, run them up.
You make it look so easy. I have trouble with those.
And now I've got my middle, all right? So then your middle lights want to go into your middle section here. And yeah, again, the middle one I tend to probably attach. And then, again, I've got this much light. So I just want to roughly have a middle point, close enough here. And I'm going to work, kind of when I break them down, I probably always do put it over the foliage, and then when I start folding it around, I don't bother. And that means I've got this section of lights to do this part of my garland to get an even coverage over the whole garland. And I just, first of all, do a rough laying out of it, just sort of see how it sits, how tightly I can pack those lights to get coverage everywhere. And because I actually want the lights a little bit more on the outside, I'm actually going to go with slightly less curves and a little wider on this. All right, so just because I had the section, it makes it easy to work that through and see what works within that smaller space. Same thing with just breaking it down into smaller sections. So I'm happy that that section is going to be fine. So then, just to reduce my cord and so forth, and to keep them in place because they're going to be hanging, I'm just going to wrap some branches over the top of some of the cord, and that will be enough to hold it in position. Nothing, you don't need to be too particular, you just want to sort of check that you're not going to lose it. And I do sometimes use the branches to pull the lights out a bit as well, so that I can get coverage as far out into the garland as possible. And so I came in that way, so I wanted to then go down to this level. You can see I still haven't tied everything on tightly as far as my garland goes, and I'll probably, what I'm using is all shatterproof. What I'm probably going to do at the end is turn it upside down and cable tie it all in, because that way I can see, it's easier to kind of get through and get the job done. I'll just cut this off. And if you've, I don't know if you can see that, when I do that, I kind of feel like I've got a little bit too much here and not enough on that side. So if it's not quite working as far as your spacing, make the section a little bit more of a, rather than an S like that, make it more of that shape. You can take your lights out a bit wider and then bring them in if you haven't got enough to go 2 wiggles to make it match the way you want it to be. Does that make sense? Was that clear? Sometimes I feel like I'm speaking double Dutch. And again, I'll just do this part. We're going to work one section of the garland for you. And so I can show you the bow as well, because I'm going to show you bow making. And just pulling that out. And that is going to be how I will continue to do the entire garland. So in that case, I've got a garland that's got, what do we say, 500 lights on a string. So there's 1,000 lights on that garland, which I think will be a really lovely coverage of lights for the front. And I think that having more lights will make it really sing. You can still see chords. Don't worry, once we get everything else onto there, you're not going to see any of it. So it'll all be fine. All right, I'm going to just try and move this out of the way, and then I'll show you the bow because I need to use the bows. So just going to bend it up, sit it over here. Okay, I know what I'm doing. All right, so because we're going with brights on this, with the whole house, I decided I'd make bows using lots of different colour ribbons, and I made two so I can make one with you guys as well. So, who has a bow maker? Who uses their bow maker? I use it. I can't make a bow. Really, this is just a single loop bow, but multiple colours. I still find it so much easier to do this because I know exactly what size I need to make my next bow because I've done, following the same formula for this. So I'm just going to change out the colours and have a look at what I've used and the other ones, and then I've got pink in both, so I'm not going to use the pink in that one, so then I've left with the other three colours. All right, so the bow maker. Piece of bind wire again. I like to keep it quite long so it makes it easy to tie it onto my piece. Goes in between the dowel here. Andrew, my husband, I got him to hammer these in and glue them in. I do find otherwise they kind of split apart a bit. All right, so that's nice and tight. In fact, you'll see when I come to take the bow off, it's really tight to get it off, but that means it doesn't fall apart on you. So I really like that. And again, I'm just sort of looking at what I've done as far as the colours and layers, and so I might put the green at the back this time. So the ribbon just slides in between, and I'm going to work they're all in inches because it's an American piece, 6-inch size. I just push my ribbon down so it's nice and tight there. I tend to have my tail just a little bit longer than what I'm going to end up cutting it to. And then you've always got to have the pattern coming around to the top, like the good side of the ribbon, when you're layering it onto the bow. So you've got to do a lot of twisting of your ribbon, and when it's wide like this, it does sit nicely when you twist it. If you're doing the 10 centimetre wide ribbon, some of that's really thick and heavy duty. You're not going to be able to make like a 3 or 4 loop bow with that very easily, even with the bow maker. All right, so it works really well with the slightly lighter styles of ribbon, lighter weight. And I'm just doing that to the 6-inch, so I'm just going to lay my ribbon down to the 6-inch, squash it in, and then I'm twisting, trying to keep the twist in close to the dowel in the middle. And 6 inches here. And then I'm going to just cut that off. Now, if you were going to do the same ribbon so let's say you wanted just one type of ribbon on it, or you wanted to use just 2 types of ribbon and have 2 or 3 loops of each, you would just do the same thing again for a second loop. It's exactly the same process. Oh, this one kind of unravelled at my feet. Let me just fix this up. I find bows, on the trees themselves, we probably use ribbon more now in the cut format. I don't use it as much unless I'm doing this really fun, whimsical style, but I do love using these big bows on wreaths and garlands. I think they look really great. So again, I'm kind of just layering it so it's coming out at slightly different angles, putting it into the piece, twisting so that my pattern is showing when I put it into the middle again. Pushing it down, twist, and
So Nicole, the twist is actually on the other side of the 2 pairs.
Yes, that's how I do it. Yeah.
Do you have to always twist on the same side, or does it not?
No, I don't think it matters. I'm going to be looking at my twists now and see. No, it's good questions.
I think I end up twisting mine in between.
Yeah, before. Yep.
Going down. I'm not getting it as flat as you.
Right, okay. Yeah, no, definitely I'm doing it afterwards. So what was the next? Oh, whether it's on the same side all the time. No, it's going to be on both because you've got loops coming on both sides. And if you wanted to really be pedantic, you could start your loops on the other, you bow on the other side, but I just don't bother. Yeah. All right, so we've got one more ribbon after this. And I've just finished it off with a finer green. I just thought I'd change it up. I do like to have the narrower ribbon sometimes in use on the bows. Excuse me. Sometimes with the narrower ribbon at the top, or particularly if you've got a fancier ribbon, you could even make your bows, each layer of fabric, slightly smaller. So on the bow maker, you'd only be looking at a 1/2 inch difference, but that means that the ribbon underneath is going to show up a little bit more. So if you've got something that you really love in your ribbon, you may not want to have it lost underneath the layers above. So the thinner ribbon at the top is often one I'll go a little bit smaller on. All right. And then, this is where it's always a little bit tight here. I've got my 2 pieces of bind wire on either side here. I like to just fold it over the top here, just push it down a little bit and then use all my muscles to get that up. Okay. Holding it as tight as, or not tight, but just sort of firmly there. I'll just move this out of the way. And then at this point, what I like to do, trying to keep the bow as upright as possible so it doesn't flop, like you don't, so therefore all the loops stay the same size. I like to just push it down onto the table, and that way I get the bow, just give me a sec, to be as tight as I can make it. So, and then turn it over and do it again. And so my piece underneath, my first loop of the binding, I've then pulled tighter again and twist it. And then to make sure you've got, you want to use all your ribbons. So tails are just as good as loops as far as your colour goes. It makes no difference. So you therefore are mixing everything up and you want to have your ribbon out. I tend to just flatten it first and then then make it round. So that way I've got all my loops out nicely spread around my bow, mixed up. If you've got, can you see there that the ribbon's kind of bent backwards on that? So you can see that it's kind of, how can I say it? When it's tied with a bit of the back showing. You're just using the wire of the ribbon, just gently position it, like stretch it back out so that you don't see the back of the bow. And then to finish it off before making it all pretty, I just cut my tails with the triangle cut to them so that they have that nice end to them, about the same length as the loops themselves. Just fold them in half, cut them. And what else? Where have we got tails? You can cut the tails obviously just on an angle. I think with the bows made up like this, I prefer them, and this is just personal, I just prefer it this way. One more. Okay. And then it's just a matter of fluffing up the bows a bit. You don't have to overdo it because remember they're going to get squashed as you're trying to put them into your piece, but you just want to make sure that you're happy with the overall look. And then they're ready to go into your piece. If you want to have long tails on them, you can put a longer piece at the bottom so that the tails come out. So a wreath, you could do that. Or you could do that for a garland. You know, if you wanted this in a corner with tails coming out, you could either have it in your bow maker or you could just add the tails underneath so it looks like it's connected to the bow and this just sits on top. Either would work well. Oh, that one's a bit long, so we'll just cut that back. So that's how we make a bow. Now, someone asked about the bow maker earlier. You're interested? Is that? Yep, great. So when I'm doing any garlands, you need to either use wired balls, or if you've got balls with caps like this, they can come off. And you are going to pull those balls onto your piece, so therefore you want to wire them. You need to glue the caps into place so that they don't come off. So I'll just do 4 of these gold ones and hopefully we've got enough of... I don't know, because I think you can see the glue still, whereas when it's on a garland, it gets pulled into the underneath. So I've even got a couple of balls that we bent and were broken, but I figure once it's in a garland, you're not going to see it. But I do feel on the tree, they're going to be a little bit more obvious. Am I in shot? Oh yeah, good. So you're just running the glue around the cap there. You don't need to use a lot of glue, but no, this seems to be sufficient. Don't often lose many when I do it this way. If you're using a glass ball, so let's say you decide to do a wreath and you want to use glass, and we've done this before and they look stunning. But of course, being glass, you don't want to glue the ball onto the wreath because they can break. I'm just going to do that only for my glue. So they can break. So you always want to tie them in. And when you get a glass ball, you know how they're sprung? You want to glue around the cap and then you want to glue in the spring, the middle bit, because otherwise that can come out. All right, so just remember that. I tend to choose to tie most of my things on. You can see what we've done today. Most of it's tied rather than glued in place. So I'm going to tie baubles in place today onto my garland. It means if I want to change my mind, I can. But if you want to glue things on, you can, or lighter ones. If you look back on our Instagram feed, if you're on Instagram, probably on Facebook as well, there's a video showing how I made the garland last year, the candy garland on my a whole mirror. And I tie the main elements in and then glued the lighter cupcakes and things onto it. I think if you glue bigger balls like this, and the particularly big ones, they're not going to sit quite as well as you can get them to do if you tie them into place. So that's just my preference on how to do that. So that's what we're going to show you today. So I'll let them dry while we get these others up. You could also, I'm going to put a couple of flowers in. You could also put picks in your garlands. I tend to put the picks in after it's in place. So that's a nice one to just add. Once it's up there, you can throw a few picks around the outside of the garland. That's what I find works well. All right, I need that. Do any of you do your front door garland? Yeah?
I've done more of a swag.
Oh yeah, nice. Yeah, I just think it's surprising, you know, it's one of the things you see so much of in the States, but we don't do a lot of here. All right, let's get this bad boy up. Okay. All right, so the way I'm going to use these bows in this, I do want this to be quite full, and these give me great filling. You know, you can see how big they are even on my wide garland. So I would want to have a couple of these or quite a few of these through my garland. We have glued quite a few balls. Just need to get my hands on them. And I've also got these flowers. So I thought we'd put a couple of flowers in. Again, they could be glued in. I'm going to choose to tie them in. So if you wanted to try and glue them, you can just glue on the back. But also you've got lights. That's the other thing. You know, if your lights go, you can't kind of fix it all up if it's all glued in place. So the same as what we were doing with the trees, it's all about breaking down the elements into smaller sections that we can then just repeat over and over again to make it easy to decorate. So for this one, I'm going to, obviously at the end of the day, I'm going to end up with another half of a garland on here. So for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have one here, then I'll end up with one there, and then down the side. So I'm going to just tie two into place for now, and I can make some more of these. So I won't do the centre. I might, once the centre's all done, put some big balls in there. I quite often will do that, but this piece is kind of more all over anyway. So when you create a garland, you can either do, as I say, something that's quite big in the middle, and then I would use the 15 centimetre balls or 12.5, or a couple of flowers together with some balls, and then spray it out so there's not much more that's on it. Or you can go with just repeating the same thing over and over so you end up with a full look throughout the whole garland. So to tie this on, as I said, I've chosen not to attach it to my frame yet so that it makes it easy to put these in place. I'm simply going to tie, just thinking my positioning exactly as we go. So tie that on. Also, because I'm using the double garland here, remember to do some where you pull the piece to the front and some to the back. So your bows, you don't want all your bows to be sitting at the front here. So then the next bow is going to be a bit further back, all right, just to give it a little bit more interest. And I'm just twisting underneath here around the piece of the middle of the garland to get that in place. And then I'm just going to stand up and do this. And then we'll get this one. Just cut this cable tie off and try not to cut the lights. So this one you can see I'm putting a little bit more to the back. And I've just got to work my hand through the back of the garland. This is always the tricky bit. And because it's the corner, of course, I'm going to go right around the frame. I've just pulled the piece of a piece of bind wire underneath the garland and one at the top. And somehow my fingers will find them both. And then I'm going to pull it in. You don't want it pulled in so tight that you lose your bow, but you just don't want it to sort of be falling off. All right, so then I've got a couple of bows there. Then I'm going to put in between that my flowers. So when I have a flower and I'm tying it in, I cut the stem off and I'll bend the stem up so it creates a little hook that I can use. So again, we're using our bigger elements. So I'm going to go with the bows being the biggest, the flowers, then some big balls, then we're going to fill up with some smaller balls from there. So, and as I was saying that we were talking about the wreath and whether we get to the wreath or not, but it is the same technique as this, where you're breaking a wreath down into sections so that you can then work, create the same thing over and over in the different sections. Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I'm just struggling with having such a big hook on the back of it.
Oh yeah.
I think it is as it comes out of the actual.
Yeah, and you're not going to be able to cut that any lower than sort of this point. It'll fall apart if you cut too low. The only thing would be to cut to there and glue around it, and then you're going to have to try and make a hole into your cane to push it in. Yeah, you've got a little bit of a. All right, so I just want to get to my frame here. I'm always trying to tie this around the frame of the garland, so the middle stem of the garland. There we go. And then now that I've got the bind wire around, that stem, I can just pull that flower into place and twist. Twist that, and then with the flowers too, remember you can have your flowers that are made a bit smaller by facing them inwards, or you can make your flowers look bigger by having the petals out. So sometimes particularly when you're working on a smaller wreath, the flowers can feel a bit big, but just keep them a little bit more compact that way. Or if you want more of a look, then you can make it bigger with that. So I would also be putting another flower here, so we're evening that up. Then we did some gluing of some balls. Inside the house I'm not using red, but I thought outside I would add some red. So again, using the bigger balls. So just looking at my spaces, I want to fill always in between, and I want this to be full, so I'm going to use a nice big bauble in here. And I think, these ones have wire only coming out one direction, which I find difficult to tie in. So I'm actually going to, that's a 15 centimetre. The 15 centimetre, we've got red, white, green and gold, I think. Maybe champagne as well. 12 centimetre, we've got a lot more. Yeah. Yeah. And if you're putting a piece outside too in the sun, of course it will fade. So that's another option. And that's another thing about tying the balls on. It means if you want to take the balls off and respray them, you can. The greenery itself will hold up really well. Assuming you use, like our greenery, I've had it on the shop for, we had it up on one shop for 5 years. It came off and it was a little bit blue, but it was fine. And with the balls, I really do want to get them in nice and tight. So I'm just underneath here, I've got it around the frame, I'm just twisting them into place here. Let's give it a whirl, see what it looks like. I can always take it off. So I'll go again, I'm doing it sort of opposite each other. Another big 15 centimetre ball here. And just tying it through the middle. Oh. We also, when we make these ball garlands, so let's say you decide to just use balls, you can have, I'll show you how you tie lots of them together onto the one stem, and it makes it really quick. So you do that in advance, and you can throw together a garland really, really quickly. Because we had a 13 metre garland for the old shop that we did this way. All right, so then we've got, what have I got ball-wise here? Oh. So we've glued these balls already. So that's the 12 centimetre size. And then what you can do with these, once you start getting a few together, let's find this colour. As I said, a few of these I found have been had a squash mark, but I thought, well, once I actually put them into the garland, I can get away with it, so I'm just going to use them. But if you find any yourselves, you obviously let us know. But get my different colours, get a piece of bind wire, and rather than tying every single piece on, you can then add a couple together. And tie it onto your piece. Tricia, who used to work with me, she used to, at this point, always, when she gets to that, she twists them together. So then the pressure comes off the balls themselves when you're actually pulling it onto the piece. And then that means you've got a nice big bunch to put in here rather than tying 3 individual items on here. And we're going to tie this onto here around our frame. Can you see how it's all coming together? It's sort of showing you a garland. We'd be here for 2 hours if we did the whole thing, but hopefully you've got the techniques that you can work it out from here. Also, you can see that I've got those balls sitting, everything's not just facing forward. So having something at the bottom, something at the top. So again, you've got that whole coverage like we were talking with this piece here. It's very easy, wreaths particularly, it's very easy to just decorate the middle and forget that you want to have things coming out from underneath as well. If you then wanted to fill smaller, so let's say I've got my dodgy ball here, I don't want that seen, so I obviously want to tie that on so it's not going to be seen, so I'll do that separately. And if at the end you had, you wanted to fill even more, you could then glue on the 7 centimetre size balls, the smaller size. They're something easy to sort of pop in at the end, glued, but remember you are going to be gluing over your lights and so forth, so it may not last you as long. But because this is going to be such a full piece, I want to get right into different corners with this, and so many balls. So you can probably guess what my tree is going to be this year now. Actually, I've gone and twisted myself. Has everyone decided their theme? Has anyone not decided a theme? It's good. Okay, so then, as I said, you can either do bunches with 3, you can do a 12 centimetre in there with 10s, or you can stick to just 10 centimetre balls. The durian balls here are wired, but, in fact, they've got a wire on both sides, so they could be tied straight on, but I'm just going to instead tie them together into a bunch to make it easier. This is the berry colour, and then there's the fuchsia. If you are into these colours, the fuchsia or hot pink, whatever we've called it in the durian, there's not many left. That's why I decided I'd better quickly get myself organised or I was going to miss out. So I can just use one of the wires that's already on here. In fact, no, I'm not, because they're going to be a bit short with a double garland. Oops.
Would you only join 3 together at the most?
I find it's a bit tricky otherwise to get the middle not seen, so I don't really like to see the middle bunch. So 2 or 3 is my preference. The other thing that we'll put in there in a second is, I think I've got them in here. You can use the finial shape, so this is all shatterproof that I'm using on here, obviously being an outside display, but having some other shapes in there is great. The other thing I will probably do once this is up is use some of those snowflakes scattered through to fill any gaps that I've got, and that will make life a lot easier. Oh, let's get this. I should have just cut off all these wires. Would have been easier. And again, I'm just going to twist them so that the pressure's off the wire, and then put them into here. If you wanted to have less coverage, then it can still look beautiful. All right, so all you do in that case is just have a couple of bunches of small balls and a bit more of a gap. Particularly if you light it, then you're going to have that the beautiful lights coming through it as well. Or you could just do the centre display and then leave everything else plain. The other option for ribbon, just so you can see it, it's not what I'm going to do this year, but just to give you an idea, is you can obviously feed ribbon through your piece. I did it last year and I was using a wider ribbon in particular. So what I actually did beforehand was I prepped it by just, actually, I'm going to try and do this on this end pit here where there's nothing else so you can see. So I just bunched my ribbon together, put my ties on, and then I kind of worked out what size I wanted my loops to be, and then went around the whole piece of ribbon that I was going to use and prepped it like this. And that meant that when I came to actually putting it onto my onto my garland, it was already again pretty even, the distances between it. It made it very quick and easy to put it into place. And anything you can do beforehand, you know, when you're not in that kind of craziness of setting everything up is always handy. And then if you're doing something like this, you want to get your ribbon in nice and low, just like the tree. You want your ribbon to come out and around, and so you can just tie that. You don't have to go all the way to the stem on that, but lower part of the branch. I'm just twisting that around. And then when you position it, you just want to make sure you get that nice body up with it, and then you can tie it into another branch or tip. And then I will normally, I mean, again, this is wide, so you definitely want to make sure you don't forget this outer edge. So you come through sort of a second time and swag it backwards and forwards so that you get nice coverage with the ribbon. You could do two layers of ribbon in it, and in fact that's what I think I did last year. And that looks really pretty, just worked through. Then I would come back, you know, sort of through here. And then in between, you're going to, again, you're breaking it up, so you'd have a bit of a flower display or your ball display going on in there. The other thing I saw, let's see if I can get this right, was to bring the ribbon, I don't know if I can do it, attach the roll, but I'll give it a whirl. So that rather than it looking like it's just going like that, almost looks like it's coming back on itself. So it comes in to this point. Yeah, let me just find something to attach this to. There we go. In fact, I'm just going to wrap that around, see if I can make this work. And then the other side of the ribbon then came through, and you kind of, so you see how it's kind of creating a bit more of a candy, like a, I don't know what you could describe it, but you've got that whirl effect, so it looks like it's swirled through the garland rather than this one that's just on the top. Can you see that, the difference between those two? Yeah, so that's, I thought that was a really pretty idea, a different way of doing it as well. You can see there, I just used the foliage to hold it in place. You can do that, it's fine. I just find, particularly when I've got my core kind of shape pieces, when I've got them wide, I know everything's going to stay where I want it to be. Tie the rest of the balls on there, and that's it for this piece. But I find that then putting it up, as I said, it's going to be much easier. It's going to sit flat the way I want it rather than having those little droops in it, which I thought was a really handy idea. And always looking at different size baubles. Let me just see if I've got a 7 centimetre in here so you can see. Yeah, I do. So this is a 7 centimetre size, just so you can see. It's quite a bit smaller in there, but it can be used to fill spaces. So this is part of the packs. They come in packs of 20. The 10 centimetre, our regular 10 centimetre balls, like with the glitter and shine, they come in packs of 12, or you can buy the fancier ones that are in individual there. Yes?
What did you attach to the door frame?
Andrew had already put up some of those cup hooks, which are ugly, and he leaves them up there, which I don't like. I would have actually just liked to have put a couple of nails, because if you had a couple of nails and even then you cable tied it on, I think it would work just as well and not be as obvious, or little screws or something. But yeah, we've got these big cup hooks that sit there all the time.
What about Velcro?
When you take it off, you're going to end up with taking all your paint off.
Of course, I've got about that.
Yeah. Velcro is good. Actually, I don't use Velcro much for Christmas decorating. Used to use it, yeah. Any other questions? I have no idea what time we're up to. 10 minutes, okay. So any questions?
Those cluster lights, are they on the website?
Not yet. I have to do that tomorrow. I promise I'll be soon. Excuse me. If you don't see them, just send me a message for that. But yeah, they're awesome. Okay, and obviously I'm using them myself. Any other questions? Yes. 500. Yep. And you can string up to 5 strings of those together. Yeah. And lights, don't they make a difference? Doesn't it make everything sing? It's got a function on it as well, so you can adjust. Keep it plain. As I said, the wreath is exactly the same. You're going to pull your shapes on. I tend to use 3s and 5s on a wreath to break it up, so I will use 3 flowers or 5 flowers, depending on the size of the wreath that I'm using, doing exactly the way we just showed you there. And then I will have either bunches of balls or bigger balls in between, and then fill, depending on how full you want it to be, with smaller flowers or smaller baubles. So again, largest to smallest, breaking it down into sizes, and that's it. If you want to do lights on the wreath, you just simply divide your lights in half. Okay, tie the 2 ends at 6 o'clock and tie the middle point at 12 o'clock. So now you've got 2 equal halves of your lights. Then, like I did here where I just held them up to find the middle point, you hold up one side, find the middle point and tie it on to 3 o'clock and then tie it on to 9 o'clock. Then you've got 4 equal areas that you can easily cover with whatever lights you've got. Regardless of what your length of lights is, that will make it easy to cover your wreath.